Hello, everyone. This is Jacob Popio, the producer of The Apex. In this episode, Jan and RJ interview Beth Humbert. Beth Humbert is the founder of the Whole Lot of Love Cafe, a local coffee shop on a mission to open its doors to be dedicated to enhancing and empowering the lives of persons with disabilities through education, preparation, and employment to advance their life skills and careers. If you want to support us, there are 3 ways to do so. One is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/the Apex Podcast. Second, visit our merch line that is proudly partnered with Envision Clothing Company at envisionclothingcompany.com. The other is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from this episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Welcome, Apex Chasers, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. As always, I am your host, Jan Almasy, and seated across the table from me is my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. RJ Holiday.
Good morning, afternoon, good night, whenever you guys are listening to this. Glad to be back.
Good generic time of the day to you, listener.
Well, you gotta hit on all areas.
All areas. So, if you guys hear any beeping, bumping, scraping, drilling, or any type of, maybe seismic activity,
Construction-esque
we
sounds.
are located, if you didn't know already, down in Innovation HQ, in the Innovation District in downtown Canton, and right outside of our doors,
There's
they
dump
are
trucks.
constructing Centennial Plaza. If you don't know what that is, Google it. Because
It's
it is
gonna
going to
the
be
easiest
super cool.
explanation.
It is going to be a really, really cool addition to our downtown area here in Canton. So if you are a Cantonian, Cantonite, or whatever you choose to go by, you need to look that up because there's a lot of people that don't know that it's happening, and it's concerning to me.
I just knew because of the construction.
Yeah, very fair. So today, guys, I'm going to have to be honest. This if I end up needing a box of Kleenex or RJ ends up needing a box of Kleenex, do not judge. Okay. Today is going to be a special interview for both of us because it's a topic that both of us kind of hold very near and dear to our hearts. And it's also something that I believe needs as much publicity as possible, especially in our area. So today we're going to be interviewing the founder of Whole Latte Love, and I will go ahead and let her explain what exactly that means. So,
Good morning.
good morning, Miss Beth Humbert.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
No, so why don't we just start off there? Why don't we explain what Whole Latte Love is?
So, Whole Latte Love Cafe is a vocational training program for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities that need what we call supported employment. So, a couple more years of just soft skills and customer service training and what it's like to respond to a supervisor in an appropriate way. And also an opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about what they like and what they don't like and just interests in general and where they want to be when they leave the nest. It's a 2-year training program. And while they're there, they're learning 4 specific paid skills in customer service that are very transferable. So they can take those skills and hopefully we can market them in a way that will land them a competitive position in the future. And then at the same time, they're also going to be volunteering with some of our community partners and learning a little bit more about, again, their interests and their preferences and where they want to work when they leave the cafe. So, the long and the short, that's what it is. It's a paid vocational training program, allowing someone to grow a little bit more and mature, especially after high school. A lot of them leave high school with a lot of those supports that they've been used to, and suddenly they don't have those supports anymore.
Right.
So we're just providing them with additional supports. Not hand-holding supports, but independent supports. How do I get to work when my mom can't drive me anymore?
Right.
How do I look for a job on my own? Or what if one day I want to live in the community with my friends instead of living at home? So we're going to talk about all those things. And we're also going to talk about, very sensitive topics like sexual harassment in the workplace. These are things that you can't take for granted. And, just we gotta handle all those different topics, just to prepare them for the real world. So,
It's the next step.
yes.
Yeah. I was actually last night, actually super early this morning. So if at any point I sound groggy, it's because I didn't get off work till 4 o'clock this morning. So when I was giving report this morning, I couldn't help but talk about the fact that we were doing this interview, because the nurses all think I'm absolutely bonkers for waking up to do this, and I'm gonna go home and definitely take a nap before I go to work tonight. But I was giving report, and one thing I was talking about was the fact that it was, that customer service, soft skills, that next step.
Mhm.
And the nurse that I was giving a report to was like, you know what? He's like, I never thought of that. I never thought, regardless of whether it's, if it's anybody getting out of high school, what that first job means.
Mhm.
And he was like, I didn't make anything working fast food. But he was like, I also learned how to deal with the public
Mhm.
from A all the way to Z.
Mhm.
And he was like, Burger King is probably my least favorite job on the planet, but it taught me a lot of patience. It taught me customer service skills. It taught me how to get to work on time. The fact that I have to wear a uniform every day,
Right.
making sure that that's clean, all this other kind of stuff that, you're fresh out of high school
They don't
might not
teach
be
you that in
processing.
school.
They
No.
don't teach you that,
Yeah,
especially
and-
when you're in special ed.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's the overall point is the lack of preparedness for the general public for that type of job is even more steep for the demographic of young adults that you're going to be working with.
Mhm.
I mean, nobody taught me how to deal with a disgruntled customer coming in, or how to be a good employee, or how to listen to someone other than my mom and dad who are telling me things to do
Right.
or
Right.
that have to be done.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Yeah.
So those are stuff that you can't pick up on your own.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I mean, I'm not throwing the educational system, the special ed system, under the bus by any means. I mean, there's certain expectations that they have to follow, certain rules and regulations, and there's only so much from an academic standpoint that they can offer during the course of a school day. And I think there's a disconnect in the school system for sure. There's no vocational assistance. They kind of put that back on the teachers, and I don't think that's fair. They didn't go to school to be vocational counselors. They went to
Right.
school to be special education teachers.
Right.
So, I mean, as a vocational counselor, I would never presume to take on that role, and I don't think it's fair that the school systems make them do that too. So, and that's another reason why some of the kids that are coming out that are a little bit lower functioning aren't ready to get a competitive
Yeah.
position. They have no clue what they want to do. I mean, there's typical kids that maybe leave school that don't have a clue what they want to do.
I
Yeah.
second that.
It takes a while.
Everybody's hands go up, right?
Yeah, it just takes a while to find yourself,
That's
find your
absolutely
passion.
right.
Yeah.
I think that it's would be applicable to the educational system though. Just like they groom what is the term? Atypical or students or
Neurotypical.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
groom them to go to college
Mhm.
or do special classes for automotive
Sure.
or computer sciences, or even I think Maslin has a cosmetology, specialization,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
which, a block of their schooling from when they chose to start it, which I think you get the option after sophomore year or
Yeah.
something, that you can start specializing, even post-secondary, getting
Right.
college education credits
Sure.
early in high school.
Right.
I think obviously I'm not a special education teacher. I don't know how much time and what resources are divided throughout a normal day of school
Mhm.
for those children or whatnot. But I feel like being able to slip in a vocational class, possibly, I mean, I'm not saying have them completely ready to go right outside of high school, but
Sure.
slightly more than what they're doing at the
Right.
at the current time is definitely has the room to be slipped in there.
Sure.
As
I mean,
of
I
late.
feel like there's plenty of kids that could benefit from a vocational class, just
Right.
from learning a little bit more about what I'm interested in. Maybe they hadn't thought about, just
Yeah.
by taking an assessment. So there's lots of tools that can be provided, and hopefully we're going to be able to provide those too, whether it's in picture form or it's in written form. And then you take those, what you find, the data, and you roll it out into the community. And okay, so let's go talk to somebody that's in that role, and maybe do an informational interview or spend the day shadowing them, so that they have the opportunity and they're empowered to make that choice. Like, I thought it was this, but it turned out to be this, and so now I'm not so interested in it. And that's fantastic. Like, you made that choice,
Right.
Instead of being thrown into it. And
Right.
Well,
Or
and then, I
it's
mean,
kind of like the square peg in the round hole kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always been that concept for many, many years, and
Yep.
I just want to try and get away from that, and just give them the resources that we have. As we take kind of those things for granted. We have the ability to explore and check things out on our own, but they don't drive, most of them, and so. Without transportation, you really have to rely on family members or a paid provider or something like that. So you're limited in terms of, and how do you wrap your brain around that?
Yeah.
So these are some of the resources that I've learned through the years, and I want to be able to share what I've discovered that's not out there, that I can offer just based on my academic and professional experiences. And plus, I have a daughter that is going to benefit from this, and I'm not going to be around forever. So I want to know that I've done the most that I could for her, so that she can be as independent as she is capable of being,
Right.
moving forward. And her friends and peers are no different.
So, I mean, that's kind of, doing my job for me as far as a segue. So thank you.
Sorry.
So one thing that I'll say before we kind of rewind back and get into the work experience and the life that, led up to this happening, that conversation right there, right? Just, I always try to detach myself and kind of look as like the outsider looking in when RJ's involved in a conversation. And it's amazing to me how true of a reflection of like the stereotypical American dream this is. And here's why. So the industry, the school system is not performing to the top of its capabilities, not necessarily because of the people, but because of the system,
Sure.
right? There's a lot of extremely passionate teachers, counselors inside of the system.
I would agree.
But sometimes you're handcuffed by the system. What can you do when you're handcuffed by the system? You step into the private industry or start your own thing. You
Right.
fill the gap.
Yeah.
It is such a beautiful thing to be able to do that, where it's, I have something to offer. I know that I can offer this and that it will benefit people. I'm going to do it.
It's a lot easier said than done, though.
Oh, it is a lot easier said than
Yeah.
done. I 110% agree with that. I mean, that's kind of the same boat that we were in.
Yeah.
When we were talking just before the mics came on, there was this gap in that. I mean, we call it empathetic mass communication, and it's seeing that gap, identifying it, excuse me, and then being willing to step in and fix it. But it takes a lot of guts to take that first step, and then I think it takes even more guts to ride it out.
Right.
Because you get smacked over and
Bumpy.
over
Yeah.
and over again.
You hear the word no a lot, but it's okay because, that's a door closed. It's not the right direction to take. You just have to be still and wait for the right opportunity, and
You got to be
and
willing
then
to
run
pivot.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. You could be running full speed in a direction, and
Right.
next thing you know, a wall comes up out of nowhere,
yeah.
crack your face off
Oh, yeah,
of it. You're
we
like,
changed directions a couple times.
kind of
Sure.
stumble a little bit, look around in the fog, and then just start walking in another direction.
I feel like it's pretty normal to take one step forward and two steps back at the same time.
100%.
Yeah.
So I mean, with that leading up into this pursuit of the American dream, right? Have you always been a North Canton native, or
Since I've been married, yes.
okay?
I went to Louisville High School, graduated there. I only lived there for a couple of years, then I went off to school. But married a North Canton guy, and have been in North Canton ever since. So 33 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, so your official job title is what?
I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor by trade. And prior to that, I was in human resources. So
Okay.
for the past 17 years or so, give or take, I've been helping people with disabilities find jobs.
So what prompted that, that push into that next? Because if you started out in human resources, what kind of caused that transition?
Well, when my third daughter was born, we knew something wasn't quite right. She wasn't following all the steps in the book that says, how do you deal with a baby when you get home? And she has two older sisters, and just developmentally, she wasn't hitting all those milestones like her sisters were. So I took some time off from work and stayed home, and probably 3 or 4 years, I think I stayed home. And then there was a little ad. So back in the day, there was a little ad in the newspaper, in the repository. An employer was looking for a part-time job developer or job coach. Mm-hmm. And I thought, based on my transferable skills and experiences, I went ahead and applied. And that's kind of how I got into the rehabilitation field.
It was just a
little ad in the newspaper.
Yeah. Huh? So when you first started, did you first start in developmental disability and trying to develop jobs in that area, or was it in a separate area and you kind of ended up migrating into that? What did that
Yeah, it was
look
more
like?
of a migration. So I've worked with different state agencies. Back in the day, it was called BVR, or the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. So I had a caseload through them. And I worked with all different types of disabilities and labels, if you will, mostly high school kids transitioning into the workplace, but some that have been at home for a while and unfortunately not doing anything. But mom and dad are like, yeah, it's time for you to get off the couch and get away from the games and get a job. Yeah.
Right.
So I had a lot of those cases too. Or, unfortunately, some folks are hit with maybe a bad car accident, and so they're no longer able to go back to the field that they were in. So now they find themselves at BVR, or now it's called Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And if they qualify, then they're linked with a job developer, and that would be someone that would work with them one-on-one and figure out what they like, how you can take those transferable skills into the community and maybe create a different position that they can be successful in moving forward. So that's kind of how I got my feet wet, if you will. So I worked with a couple of different providers in the community for a number of years. Then I went back and got my master's at Kent in rehabilitation counseling. And from there, I went to work at Metro Health Medical Center in Cleveland, and that by far was probably the best learning experience, the best employer. So I worked in the rehabilitation department with traumatic brain injury and stroke and spinal cord.
That's tough.
Yeah, but
That
it was
is
such a
tough
cool,
job.
great people, amazing people. I mean, I would get them probably 2 years out post injury or
I'm
illness.
taking care of them in the ICU.
Right. Yeah, they're not ready for Voc
That
then.
happens.
I mean, they're not. Some of them weren't ready for Voc 2 years out, but the beauty was we ran a group counseling program for them, and it was like a 6 to 9 week program. They came 3 days a week, and it was essentially getting them ready to maybe volunteer, and it also allowed them the opportunity to figure out, okay, or accept, I can't go back to that welding position because I've, my motorcycle accident kind of screwed up my brain a little bit. And so they have to learn a little bit more about their deficits and
what they're now capable of.
Correct.
Which is a hard pill to swallow.
Very hard pill to swallow.
That's a reassuring thing to me as a, in the position that I'm in, knowing that something like that exists. Because I wasn't ever really sure what happened, after you get stable enough that you can go to a step down unit,
Right.
then that's, you know, about all you see.
This was outpatient, so
So-
they would come 3 days a week, and they would spend the whole
That's
morning
awesome.
with us. And
Good.
yeah, I made some really good friends in that program. Yeah, good people.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even from, you know, the acuity of my standpoint,
Hmm.
I took care of a gentleman about a year ago. Well, maybe a little bit longer, undisclosed amount of time. That suffered, I mean, massive orthopedic trauma. We'll say a construction accident,
Mhm.
right? Spinal cord fractures, rib fractures, bilateral femur fractures. I mean, hip fractures, everything basically from his thoracic rib
The
cage
whole 9
down
yards.
was
Yeah.
just demolished.
Hmm.
And he was on, I mean, he's on a PCA pump, on a fentanyl drip, like all this other kind of stuff. We ended up getting him extubated and everything. And some of the first things that he was saying when he came out was just like, I want a cheeseburger and
Mm.
I can't believe I'm alive.
Mm.
And was just the happiest human that I've like ever taken care of in that state. And it like, that always sticks with me. Like when I'm
Mhm.
having a crap day,
Mm.
I'm like,
It's pretty profound.
right. You know, if this guy could come out and all he really wants in life is a cheeseburger and somebody to crack a joke,
There you
then
go.
yeah,
He
then
still
I'm
has
good.
a long road ahead,
Right.
and hopefully he'll still keep that attitude because that'll
Right.
help him moving forward for sure.
This is why I find my girlfriend's profession so commendable in what she wants to do in occupational therapy.
Okay.
I mean, reteaching people the simple things that, I mean,
How to button a button. Or,
well, they can ask any. Well, I mean, that
Yeah.
the whole reason she went into that over PT was because her job varies. Rather than someone comes in with a leg injury, you do the same 6 steps to rehabilitation over 8 weeks or whatever it is. They're free to go. They either
Right.
get way better, a little bit better, whatever you judge them. Well, now with the job that in occupational therapy, they can come in and say anything. I want to relearn how to ride a bike. I want to learn how to continue writing with my right hand, even though I don't have as much control over
Right.
that part of my body anymore. And that makes her job like extremely interesting. But the most interesting thing about me is the people that are coming in there and the things that they're asking to relearn or figure out how to do in a different way are the things that they care most about in their life, most likely. So rather than just not mundanely, but working on parts of just to walk again, this is something that they're carrying through because it is a passionate part of their life
Sure.
that they
Right.
desperately want to get back to themselves.
Mhm.
And that applies to people who love what they do
Right.
or any type of job field.
Right.
I can't imagine, going to school for X amount of years, getting the job you absolutely want, and then all of a sudden never being able to
having all of it stripped away.
having all after all that hard work. So
Yep.
to find someone to come in there and if you have that ability after an accident like that to go back to doing what you're doing, but finding a way to do it differently than what you were trained and taught for the last given years,
Right.
and then being able to go back to that, I would have to give part of my soul to that individual who helps you refigure all that out for
Sure.
yourself.
Yeah, the program that I worked in when I was up at Metro, I mean, I worked collaboratively with speech and PT and OT and rehab psychologists, and just learned so much about the importance of their jobs and what they bring to the table. And we take activities of daily living for granted, quite honestly. And when you have a significant injury like that, you essentially have to learn all of those skills all over again. Some, how do I feed myself? How do I get dressed in the morning? And
So you worked in an outpatient.
yes.
So where they would come to you, and was it all job related, or was it daily living type of stuff as well?
Well, the vocational part was a part of the whole OT, PT, and speech. So some were still in therapy, and while others may have already graduated, and they would be referred to us for our VOC program.
Gotcha.
So it was just a combination of both, basically. It just depends on, how long they had been going through the recovery process.
Gotcha. The reason that I ask is my girlfriend's final project for her master's degree in OT at Walsh. They did like side by side comparisons with an outpatient program that helped rehabilitate people with traumatic brain injuries. And then I forget that for the life of me, I can't remember. I tried to look on my phone and find it too before I asked, but it was a program where it was like the individual would go live in a group home for a year rather than going 2 to 3 times a week or whatever it is. It was daily, and they'd actually take them on like day trips rather than setting up like a mock business or a mock grocery store. They'd actually go as a group, and they'd live in the house and have 24-hour monitoring and all that kind of stuff. The issue is people don't want to fund that type of venture.
I was going to say, I wonder who's paying for that.
Yeah, and that is exactly the problem. And their hopes into shining light on this, and even their teacher told them that it would be extremely beneficial to, if any of them ever got a doctorate, actually write a paper on it and find actual statistics and numbers. Because if it can be proven, she believes that if it can be proven that it is a significant improvement, because I think what they said is within a year, what you retain back from a traumatic brain injury is about 98% of what you're going to get back any time after that.
Right.
So they said if they can prove that that is a great enough difference between that, they think the government would be way more inclined to fund for that type of program outside of outpatient or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting project that her and 3 other girls in our program.
That's pretty cool.
But I'd never heard anything like that. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Well, there was a car. There was a car in our program where you learned to get in and out. There was a grocery store. There was like a bedroom. Is all reenacted, but honestly, these are things that you still had to learn.
Yeah.
To what do I do when I get to the grocery store? What's an apple? I mean, traumatic brain injury can be significant.
Yeah.
So they got to learn all that all over again. So I think, man, a house, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they would all live together for that 365 days. There'd be constant monitoring. And then at that point, in my head at least, it was kind of like, well, you just kind of inevitably run into the things. You don't have to actively, today we're doing the car exercise. Yeah. Today we're doing the grocery store exercise. It's just going to happen over 365 days.
Right.
And in my opinion, you'd probably even be able to cover more than, obviously, just sheer time, 3 days over 7 days. But organically, you're running into those things. And I think it would be a lot more natural to the patients rather than, because unfortunately, there is a difference between a mock store and a real grocery store.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, organically running into a situation versus like preparing for something because you know that you're about to go into it.
Right.
Completely different mindset.
Absolutely. And there's some anxiety and yeah.
If you like organically, like imagine opening up a drawer and having a bowl of cereal and staring and you do what
do I do
utensil
next?
am I grabbing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like rather than being in a rehabilitation setting, I know that, I mean, coming from the military background, I do that kind of stuff all the time. When you were in boot, or any time afterwards, it was always preparation for organic situations that come up. How do you process it?
Sure.
How do you make a decisive decision and move forward? And with traumatic brain injuries and stuff like that, it can be extremely difficult with different types of aphasias and everything like that to get to that next level.
Sure.
So that is definitely a super interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry to get off track.
That's
but
okay.
It kind of led into it a little bit. I was like, this is real. I mean, we have someone who's in the field of rehabilitation and that kind of stuff. I just kind of wanted to pick your brain on it and what you would think about it, because obviously her and her peers love the idea of it because it was their project.
Sure.
But for someone who's in the field, I mean, if you see it as something that is worth the time and money to put in, and it's really going to help those individuals, then I think it only solidifies that she should continue with her work after she graduates with her master's. Because
there you go, Steph. It's time to get the doctorate.
Yeah.
Planting the seed now.
Well, and there's that stigma with brain injury, especially if you don't truly understand it. It can be scary because the behaviors are very challenging, or can be very challenging. And I don't know. I just think a program like that would be so beneficial.
Yeah.
in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
So after Metro, I decided 5 years drive into Cleveland. My commute, I was sort of tired of my windshield time, if you will. So I took a job a lot closer to home, and I was the program director for a day program, and that's how I became introduced to intellectually and developmentally disabled population.
Gotcha. And that so as all of this is happening, Caroline is kind of going through her life at that point as well,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And all of the idea, I mean, every video that I've watched, posts that, I've done my research on, kind of attributes her as the main catalyst
Yes.
for
yes. She's
all
the
of this
driving
coming to
force.
fruition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
why
I
don't-
mean, just because she did some volunteering when she was in high school at St. Luke's, and just watching, it was a genuine collaboration. She loved the service part aspect, and just making friends, and they aren't judgy.
right.
So I felt like that was a good combination. It was a good fit.
Mhm.
And then she also took a class in high school through her special education program. It's called the Hotspot. And so essentially they served coffee and tea and hot chocolate to their peers and to the teachers first period. She loved that class. She took it all 4 years that she was there. And my husband and I would periodically pop in the high school and, kind of catch them in action and just observe. And that's where the idea originated. Like, this is a cool concept, and it can easily be carried into the community, because the 4 years that she was there, she held on to some of those skills that she learned from year after year, and they kept adding and building, and so that's where the concept came from. Like, this is doable.
Well, Lord knows Ohioans love their coffee.
Yeah. Well, I think just nationwide.
Especially on
Yeah, coffee's not going
days
anywhere.
like today.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the research that I've done, destination coffee shops, mission-driven coffee shops are what sets, your Starbucks and your McDonald's and different places apart.
With an industry that's so flooded,
Hmm.
I mean,
Well,
you don't
go ahead.
you don't get that special connection with a local business like that. With unless you're talking to the barista every day and his or her life story,
Yeah.
it's not really
Right.
It's more or less a just drive through, give me my coffee.
Exactly.
And I honestly think if they turned it all to automated, I don't think anybody would bat an eye.
No, no
besides
one
the
would
people
care.
who lost their job.
Right. Right. But ours is twofold. You were giving someone a job that needs a little bit more support, but we're also hopefully tearing down some of those stigma walls, that society has with people with disabilities in general, whether they're labeled autistic or Down syndrome or they have a physical disability. I mean, it's just a label.
Yeah.
Like, people shouldn't be judged by their differences. That's the concept that we're hoping to narrow a little bit, and just prove that everyone's capable of working if you just give them a chance. So
Yeah, I mean, just like the market in general, with any type of local-owned business, I think that the world is kind of shifting backwards / forwards, I guess. We're taking one step forward, 2 steps back, but in a positive way, where everything for the last, as far as back as I can remember, which is not, super far, but like everything has been focused on growth, commercialization, globalization, the birth of the internet, speed, faster, bigger, better processors, actually faster, smaller, better processors. And now everything's kind of moving backwards, where we're so interconnected that people want to take a step back and like actually look around their communities again. It's why Canton is spending, so much redeveloping this downtown area. There's little local businesses that are opening back up, like Delhi, Ohio down here, or Basil, or up in North Canton. I mean, what is it? Johnny's Bakery opening up another location in North Canton in the last decade. And that's been around forever.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, at least on Wirtz, they've been around for forever. But these people are starting to migrate back to supporting their communities.
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. I mean, it's an amazing thing. That's where America really got started, was these communities of people really kind of inter-supporting each other.
Mhm.
Entrepreneurs from the area starting a business to employ people from their area,
Mhm.
not to outsource and make a crap ton of money because of profit margins, which is, you're never going to be able to completely get away from that globalization
Right.
idea because
Right.
we're interconnected as a world at this point. But those principles of like starting to positively benefit your community, I think is really changing. I mean, it's what we're really trying to do as far as highlighting like what's happening in the community. And I think that with Whole Latte Love, that entire thought process of giving back to a population in order to give light to that population, and give them fighting chance.
I mean, it's already happening. Just with the news, the media.
My sister had actually heard about your guys' company, and I sent her the couple links and whatnot that she'd sent me this morning. She goes, I had no clue that was in Canton, but she goes, I know. She's like, I've seen this lady before. She's like, you guys are interviewing this? I was like, yeah. She's like, you're gonna cry. I was like, I'm gonna try to keep it together this morning. You leave me alone.
But I just think it's cool because the platform is actually giving folks a voice that have never been heard before. Well, they have, but shh, be quiet.
Right.
And now it's just give them the
Screaming it from the
microphone,
rooftops,
and let their voices be heard. And this is where they're at, and accept them for where they're at, and help them take a step forward. That's all.
So Caroline's influence on the store, and it being built right now. Before we kind of get into this list of questions that we kind of have for you,
Okay.
What are your guys' like her dream for it / your guys' greatest needs right now?
So I don't know if she truly understands the magnitude. I mean, she knows we've been talking about this coffee shop for the past 2.5 years, right? And she knows that the idea came from high school. But she's since graduated.
Right.
And so life has come and gone. And just because I had no idea how long it would take to launch this thing. I mean, it's a huge, huge project. First of all, you have to start a nonprofit, and then you have to form a board, and you have to organize that board. And there's just a lot of moving parts.
All the legal stuff.
Yes.
The paperwork.
My favorite.
Uh-huh. And then you have to write a business plan, and you have to create a pro forma. And so at the end of the day, it's a nonprofit, but it's also a business. So you don't want to put all this blood, sweat, and tears into a business that's going to fail in 2 or 3 years. So your numbers have to make sense, right? And they have to make money. So all of that had to, be put together.
Yep.
Yeah. And then for us, location, right? We couldn't be off the beaten path somewhere. I wanted it to be in North Canton because that's where we're from, and everyone knows Caroline. She's a big walker in town, and so that's her passion. And so she just loves, like, when people drive by and honk at her, she waves, and all the North Canton police officers, they kind of keep an eye on her, which I appreciate. And so anyway.
Small town USA, baby.
Yeah.
I love it.
Exactly.
I love it.
So she knows that the coffee shop is brewing.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal.
She knows that the sign's up, and she's been in the location. We actually did our Spectrum interview there. So it's real. It's a real concept, but it hasn't really hit yet. Like, I'm going to be working there because, I mean, you can ask her, are you ready for the coffee shop to open? Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. But I'm not sure she truly understands.
Fun isn't the word that you'd use right off the bat.
No,
I think
honestly,
it'll be fun,
she's pure joy, honestly. I mean, she finds joy in just about everything. And that's why it's going to be so cool when customers come in, because they're going to be greeted by all different types of Carolines, with that pure joy.
Right.
And also their coffee is not going to be made by me. It's going to be made by one of them. So there you go. But right now she's she's placed in a therapeutic horse farm called Pegasus, which is out in
Okay.
Hopeville.
Yeah.
A very well-oiled machine. And so she's, that it was the best transition for her after high school because she's been riding horses for years and years. So from time to time, I'll ask her, "Are you ready to leave Pegasus and maybe work at the coffee shop?" And she's like, "I don't know," because she really likes her job. It's important to her. Gives her value, gives her meaning. You don't have to, blast an alarm in the morning to get her out of bed because she knows it's her job to go to work and feed the animals. So hopefully I can get her away from there when it's time to open. So that's where Caroline's at right now.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I just that feeling of job satisfaction and like actually being passionate about what you do is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something people search for their entire lives.
Sure.
And that's
But
a beautiful thing.
the other flip of the coin is how transferable
Mm-hmm.
are those skills. Yes, she's learning how to care for animals, and that's amazing. She needs to have that empathy towards animals
Right.
and their care. But
And that's what I really like
how
about
do you
the coffee
market?
shop.
Yeah, how do you market
model.
those skills? Unless you go work on a farm, which there's, that's fine. But right now, when it's cold outside and you live in Ohio, who wants to work outside?
Yeah.
Very true.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So, anyway.
So, and then with everything kind of going on, so your greatest need right
Oh,
now.
our
as far
greatest
as-
need is funding. I am going after all of the foundations now that we have an address, writing, sharing our proposal and business plan and all of our marketing tools that we have. Just having conversations with folks that might be willing to contribute to our cause. Hopefully, it's a one-time contribution. Like I said, we're creating this wall of blessings, and we want to be able to recognize those that are contributing to our mission and helping us move forward. And so we've created a GoFundMe. We have PayPal. We're selling merchandise on our website.
And just for everybody's reference, we'll make sure that we get those links and inside of the show notes and any social media posts. We'll make sure that we give
Easy
you guys the
access.
ability to follow those so that you can access this.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then for anybody listening, so this isn't just to the listeners, right? Now, you guys have a responsibility, okay? Because you're Apex Chasers. You know what you're supposed to do, right? You're sharing your message with people that either need to hear it for their benefit, but at this point, I'm going to ask you to share this message with people for Whole Latte Love's benefit. If there's anybody within your network of people that you know of that are, in the Northeast Ohio region, or any of these national foundations that could potentially provide funding to something like this, or a business that would look to some type of donation towards this cause, reach out to them. You can shoot me an email. My email's listed everywhere. And then I'll make sure that we get them in contact with Beth. Okay?
Appreciate it.
So that is 100% the charge that I'm giving y'all is to make sure that you go out there and share this message with people because this is something that we really want to see take off. Okay?
It's all tax deductible.
Which is always a plus.
Yes, it
right?
is.
501c3.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So with that call to action, we'll kind of wrap up with a couple of these questions that we have for you here. So we'll start off. I mean, this is probably one of my favorite ones because I could literally quote my grandfather all day, every day, as far as lessons that I've learned from him as a child. So this first one is just kind of one that's warm to my heart, I guess, because I think that people carry a lot of things from their childhood through their entire lifespan. So what is one lesson that you remember from your childhood that you still use on a daily basis?
Well, I'm a PK. So for those of you that don't know what that is, I'm a preacher's kid. And so every 8 to 10 years or so, we would move. And sometimes moving was a little more challenging than others in terms of adapting. But I feel like I was blessed with the ability to change, to be adaptable to different circumstances. And so moving forward, I'm not rigid. I go with the flow, pretty flexible. I mean, I have my own thoughts and ideas, and I'd like to kind of see those things move forward. But I would say change was the most critical lesson that I learned in growing up, just knowing how to make it work. And that's kind of helped me with this whole project.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Kind of dealing with the cards that you've got,
Right.
and
Right.
because there's two ways that people tend to encounter that, and I didn't move around a whole lot as a kid, but my mom immigrated here from Slovakia, and so I grew up homeschooled with a mom that didn't speak super good English, and then like went into high school, and I used to get made fun of for messing up words and all this other kind of stuff, and we traveled a lot when I was a kid, so being able to see like, okay, how are my grandparents living in Europe? How are my cousins living over there? What does it look like for my uncle that lives in Italy? All those different kind of perspectives all link into one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this beautiful formation where it's like, okay, I may not have gotten this position, or I may not have this, thing that I've been seeing everybody else on the other side of the fence seems to have. But, my side of the fence isn't so shabby.
Right.
I'm kind of digging it over here.
It takes a minute to figure it out, but
Yeah.
once you realize, I'm not going to Italy, I'm maybe going to Holland, and Holland's okay. It has a lot of interesting things.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That sometimes we encounter pathways, right? And I talk about this in speeches sometimes, where you end up with a right or a left. And I'm a man of faith, so we'll kind of talk about that here for a little bit. Is that one direction might be a direction that you want to go, and the other direction is a direction that whatever you might believe in is trying to push you in that direction.
Sure.
So most of the time when we encounter those situations, it's like gut is pointing right, brain is pointing left. 50-50 chance. Sometimes we go left instead of right. And what I tell people is like, if your gut is literally wrenching you to the point where you need to turn right, and nobody else understands it, it doesn't make sense to anybody, your brain is even telling you this is a stupid idea, try to at least go right for a short period of time. Because what will end up happening is your brain will override, you'll go left, and then you'll get smacked onto the right-hand side, because that's where you were supposed to be eventually.
Right.
So it's you either go there by choice, or somewhere down the line something's going to happen and get difficult, and then you get rewritten onto the right-hand path.
Yeah.
But it's all about just being okay with your side of the fence.
Right.
And what you have. And like you said, it might not be Italy. Maybe we're, the plane and landed in Holland.
Right.
Now what?
Yeah.
Are we going to do? You're just going to complain about not being in Italy, or are you going to go enjoy Holland?
Well, it would have been ideal if this project would have had a manual.
Yeah.
But essentially, I created the manual, and I had to take those moments where I wanted to go left, but I just stood still for a minute, and I had to learn how to be still.
Enjoy the silence.
Yeah, and just wait for that direction. And that's that was the biggest pill to swallow, because I'm type A, so do it. Let's do it. Jump off the dock. But I had to really learn to be still through this whole thing and just listen to what God was telling me to do.
Yeah, sometimes the biggest learning curve with entrepreneurship is patience.
Yeah, and once I figured that out, then people came into my life that I'd never known before, along this path, along this journey, and they provided me, or they took my hand and they said, okay, I'm going to connect you with so and so, and it was just the right connection at the right time. Well,
and then it almost starts to get weird.
I mean, everything is like been a God thing.
It's like serendipitous.
Yeah.
At that point, that's one word that Linda always likes to use when she talks about just being in this type of area and encountering the people that we encounter, is that it's just all planned serendipity.
Absolutely. I fully agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of move on to another one here. And this one I feel like we kind of already answered a little bit throughout the show, but do you feel like when you were growing up that you always kind of had a drive to be an entrepreneur, or do you believe that you kind of got pushed into the entrepreneurship and the universe chose it for you?
The universe chose it for me. For sure. Absolutely.
And
I
what did
think
that realization moment feel
my
like?
positions, my positions throughout my professional career and my life hat that I've been wearing with Caroline, and just all the learning that took place with having a child with a disability. These aren't things that you can just pick up a book and say, okay, now I get it. And you have to learn. You have, it's almost like they prepared me for this point in my life. I thought my last position, I was going to be there for a long period of time. The program was awesome. The employees were amazing. The people that we were serving, all great people, but it wasn't where it was just a stepping stone for me. It's God wanted me to be there to learn a few things, but to move forward.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a hard step. That leaving that position was a hard step for me, but it wasn't the right place for me to be for a long period of time. And looking back, it was a rough year and a half, but I learned a lot. So prepared me for this jungle that I've stepped into.
Yeah.
So.
That is probably the perfect way to describe that journey. Is
Yeah.
that it is just, you don't know what kind of booby traps are waiting behind the next tree.
It's a beast.
Yeah.
No, but as long as like the one concept I see is that you've taken small parts from every position that you've been in, and then it's it's refreshing to know that even if you haven't been going about your whole life preparing to be an entrepreneur or be your own boss or anything like that you have the capability to take and retain skills from all your previous jobs and then throw it together and be like, hey, I'm not half bad at this. I think I can do it.
Well, I wouldn't go straight to, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Right.
I think this is where God wants me to be because he's placed all this stuff in my path for the past 2.5 years. He hasn't given up on me, and I don't feel like he's going to give up on me yet. We're going to be helping a lot of folks moving forward, and so it's where I'm supposed to be.
So we just got 2 more here. One of them we're just going to kind of leave off, but with Christmas coming up, that's a lot of times people buy, I don't want to say superficial things, but they buy things like a pair of shoes or, clothing, stuff like that. And I was really kind of curious about something that would really add either emotional or intellectual value to somebody. And so one of the questions that we have listed here is, if you had to buy a book for someone that you cared about for Christmas, what book would you choose and why?
So I thought of 2 books. Is that okay?
That's fine. Perfect.
So one is called House Rules, and it's by Jodi Picoult. I'm a huge, huge fan of Jodi Picoult. This particular book is all about disabilities and autism and learning about Asperger's and all those little quirks that work. And it's just, she did such an amazing job in her research and her portrayal of the individuals that are in this book that I think if someone were maybe they just discovered that their child is autistic or has a disability in some form or fashion, this book would give them hope. And so that would be and it would also provide some background information on why things are the way they are, and not to be scared because it's all good. The other one is called Freedom Riders. It was a movie years and years ago. Such an amazing book. And this one's by Aaron Gruell. And I have always loved the book, the movie, just everything about it. Just being the underdog and providing for, a population that needs to be heard. So those are my 2 books.
Those are both. And we'll take those and we'll list them, as well for people that are interested in reading them. The Freedom Riders is definitely.
Is that Sandra Bullock?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yes, it is.
I want to make sure I'm referencing the right movie.
Wait,
in my
no, it
brain.
wasn't Sandra Bullock. It was
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, was I wrong?
Hold on.
she was in another movie, like a Clint Eastwood movie, and she was like a fighter, a boxer. What was her name?
Oh, now I know who yours. Was that
Oh,
Big
gosh.
Baby, $1 Million Baby? Or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, exactly. I can picture
See.
her face.
I don't know her name.
Freedom Riders film. All right, guys, we're gonna sidetrack here. For
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm gonna tweak out because I thought it was Sandra Bullock too.
Yeah.
Where's the cast list?
IMDb.
RJ, I think that
IMDb boy.
we've earned our rabbit. We've earned our rabbit hole for
I need to know now because it'll bother me for the rest of the day. Might as well do it on air because someone else that listens
Is doing
to this.
it, yeah.
We're doing it
They're,
for this
they're
is for you.
screaming at the microphone right now, like wishing that we could hear them. Like, it's this person, you idiots.
I can picture her face, but I can't recall her name.
John Lewis, Diane Nash.
Hillary Swank.
That's it.
That's who it is.
What took you so long?
I'm on IMDb right now.
Hillary Swank. Okay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is not
Yeah,
Sandra
she
Bullock.
did great.
And that
She
was
was
the $1 Million Baby
amazing.
one,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
All right. Well,
There you go, guys.
there you go, guys. Hillary Swank. That's who we were looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just seems like a Sandra Bullock movie.
So, before we re-dive down that rabbit hole, we've got one more question, and then after this, normally what we do is I always tell guests, not that you haven't had the floor the entire time, but this question I think kind of leads into your monologue, right? The message that you want people to hear, laying the heart out on the table, and really kind of connecting, right? And so that last question is, if you could have a billboard placed anywhere that said anything, and hypothetically millions of people would see it, what would it say?
I feel like, and this is sort of my tagline, no one should be defined by their differences. And, as we work together, we're better together than we are, independent. But I don't know, I'm also a huge fan of Maya Angelou.
Mhm.
And I think one of her sayings that has always kind of stayed with me is, people may forget your name, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so I think I don't know if that's too long to be on a billboard, but, just embracing everyone's differences and, taking a hand and just being kind and helping people move forward.
Kindness is free.
Both are great.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's the emotional impact that you can make on people through little things that you do on a daily basis. And I think once the cafe is fully up and running, I think there's going to be a lot of emotional impacts that are going to be made on a daily basis
I hope
that
so.
are going to not only make loyal customers, but bring people in just for the sheer fact of, that being passed down from,
Sure.
one person's mouth to another person's ears.
Right, right. I mean, there's definitely a reason why we didn't want a coffee or a drive-through. We want people to come in and pause and take a moment and get to know the folks that are working the cafe because they have a lot to offer. And again, breaking down those barriers, that's the critical component, like introducing folks into the community with disabilities. I mean, they need to be in the community. They have a right, just like you and I, and they have a choice. That they should have choices for work as well, just like you and I have had those opportunities. And so that's what this platform is providing, is just giving them a voice and giving them some opportunities to learn and grow and expand and leave the nest when they're ready.
Can't think of any better way.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Especially drinking coffee, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that I was going to have time to stop and grab a cup this morning, but because of the roads, I decided to get here without my coffee, unfortunately. But now the whole Latte Love is open. I'm going to stop there. All right, guys. So I think that's, Beth, thank you
You're welcome.
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
on.
Thanks
It
for
was a
having
great
me.
interview.
110%.
Appreciate it.
Especially, with the pseudo blizzard
Inclement
going on
weather.
outside. I definitely really appreciate you coming down and taking the time to talk to us, for sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And then you, listener, I know I'm in your either car speakers or coming out of your phone or in your headphones. We talked about this earlier. You've got a job, okay? Now, I need you to listen real close, all right? You need to tell people about this. You got it?
Spread the wealth.
Right. And I'm watching because I can see statistics on our tracking. So
The pressure.
yeah. So if I know that there's the normal that's already there. So if I don't see a spike, I'm coming after you. All right. But in all serious, guys,
One thing.
shoot.
I'm not sure when this episode is exactly going out, but when is the official open date for Whole Latte Love?
Well, that's based on the construction, and so there's some variables with regards to that too, between the architects and the contractors and the engineers and all that. We're hoping by April,
Okay.
but realistically, probably May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to give our listeners, because I'm assuming this will be out long before.
Oh yeah.
But we just want to give them an idea of when they can get their own hands on your guys' coffee and make a stop into the store whenever it's open. So
Well, we will definitely be sharing the progress that we're making through our Facebook page, and
we'll be shuttling that out through all of our
Post
social
them.
medias and stuff as
Okay.
well.
great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry for cutting you off. I just
Oh
wanna
no,
make
you're
sure.
good. You're good. And that just means that the more people that they reach out to, the more funding that we're able to
Yep.
get.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the
You
most
know, the
critical
easier
piece
it'll
right
make.
now. Because we all new
A full
equipment.
build out ain't cheap.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I mean, I tried to find a place, a restaurant, a pre-existing restaurant, so that it wouldn't be as costly. But
Sometimes they don't exist.
they do exist, but it just depends on the realtor,
Yep.
And again, it's business, it's big business, and so if you don't find a realtor that believes in, I was also looking for a realtor that believed in our mission, and was willing to help us out a little bit with the build out. So
I think that you'll find plenty of people that that listen to this that have that attitude that will believe
great,
in what you're doing.
that's awesome,
So
good.
With that, Apex Chasers, as always, if you'd like to find Whole Latte Love, I know it's Whole Latte Love on Facebook,
Whole Latte Love Cafe.
Cafe on Facebook, and then the website.
It's wholelattelovecafe.org.
Okay. So those are the two places that you can go to find information right now. We'll be reposting information on ours. As always, for us, we only have one mission, and that's to go out, share the message with somebody that you think that needs to be positively impacted by this episode. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it is at Jan_Almasy. RJ is at DocHoliday92, right?
That was
And
where I
then
was born.
yeah, and then I actually, for those of you that are hip, your
here
boy
it
has a
comes.
TikTok, so you can go to Jan_the Apex Podcast on TikTok, and any other social media sources. I mean, I'm sure if you type the Apex Podcast and any of our names into Google, you will find us. If you want to follow our content. So with that, I hope that you guys have a tremendous rest of the generic time of the day that you may be listening to this.
Have
And,
a happy holiday season and New Year. Be safe.
and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.